Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show we're talking about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Shadow and Bone, Season 2, Episode 3. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, so first and foremost, let's start off with Stormhond and the others. Obviously, it's like, hey, we're on our way to Ravka. Specifically, we're going to go to the foe, because like, oh, I'm gonna go with you, because once again, I'm supposed to meet with the king and get my reward afterwards, right? Once again, Stormhold ends up proving time and time again to be quite full of a lot of surprises. First and foremost, the part of this ship becoming an airship is pretty interesting. And Alina attempts to bring down the foe, even though she's more powerful, which I guess it's a combination of the two. The fact is that a lot of her confidence is rocked because of all that Kerrigan did. Like, he got into our psyche, so she kind of doesn't think it's enough, and maybe legitimately it isn't enough, but a lot of her power is wavering because she is doubting herself, because he's making her feel smaller, like her power isn't her own, and she was feeling it for a second, but then the fold is just, I think, too much, and it's a larger representation of, once again, Kerrigan's the one who made it, and so for the fold to push back against her, that it's too powerful for her, even with two amplifiers, isn't able to push it back, is almost signifying Kerrigan how he made her feel like, oh, your power isn't your power, it's mine to do what with, so it's almost repeating in that regard. I mean, granted, she took back control in the season 1 finale, but it's just the shoe to kind of be on the other foot in this giant metaphorical representation of their dynamic is such an interesting thing. The ship ends up crashing because it has a hole in it. Luckily, they landed on the Rafkin side of things, but some First Army soldiers roll through. You're like, oh boy, this isn't... I thought it was the dude that Mal and them were running from in Novia Zam, but it's not. And then we get the reveal on who Stormhond really is. He is the second prince of Ravka. He's... his real name is Nikolai, and I was like, interesting. So hiding the fact that he's a royal, which I'm going to talk about a franchise that I love, but it's like the Trails of / Kaseki series as a whole. But obviously, like, he's a big part of like the Liberal arc and the Arabonia arc. But he reminds me a lot of Prince Oliver. I'll leave it at that if you don't know the story of that. But like, they share a lot of principles where it's like they kind of have an outside perspective compared to, you know, what they know. Because it's a similar thing of like, I went out there and experienced the world because I want to do what I believe is best for my country. And he even talks to Alina about it. Like, I feel I can do so much more as a privateer, not a pirate. There's a difference. Privateer than I can as a prince, because as a prince, he's just a figurehead. I mean, first and foremost, he's also the second prince. Like, his brother has more validity, I guess, in eyes, because he was always like, once again, he's like, I'm the backup prince. If anything ever happens to my older brother, was it Vasily? If anything ever happens to him, it comes to me. But because his brother's the one leading the charge against the Grisha, he's the one using the First Army as kind of like his plaything to hunt down Grisha. He comes from the more perspective of like, no, I believe Grisha and just other non-Grecians could come, non-Grisha could come together. Like, I believe that we can work together. He wants to reunite his country. He wants to make it the best it can be. Now, this is early on, and he could just be the optimistic prince, but I feel like, so that's why I'm like, he definitely feels Oliver. I hope we don't get a twist later on where he isn't Oliver, that he isn't. But for right now, I want to believe in him because I can see so many different parallels with him, this character I'm familiar from this video game franchise, but I see a lot of parallels of like, yeah, I went off pretending to be something that I'm not in other countries, going out because he was able to build alliances because, once again, he's just a figurehead and I'm bound by what I can really be and what I can do. But as a privateer, I got to meet so many people. Like, the fact is, he has two people who are by his side who are part Shu. That would never be acceptable. He would never be able to do something like that as a prince, but he got to go out there, experience the world, get to know and form alliances with people that he normally wouldn't as a Ravkan prince. So I think that is such an interesting development for that character. And obviously it's like, right, you know what it's like, Alina, to do whatever it takes to protect the people you love. And for him, it's like, that's what I'm doing. I want to protect my country. I want to make it the best it can be. And that's why he even admits to her. I mean, we already knew because of episode 1, but now Alina knows he's the one that sent Kaz and the crows after her. That was what he orchestrated this all for, because he'd even said it last episode of what she represents. She's a symbol of hope of what the future could be. He's the one with the plan of like, I can see what I want my country to be. You could end up helping us reunite this country, especially when his country's so divided, not even just the way it has been before now, it's even more so divided with Vasily focusing more on going after Grisha rather than worry about the Fjordan situation. Like Fjorda, it's like nipping at their heels, but he's more so focused on using the first army as a means of going after the Grisha. But because Nikolai's actually also got a place called, was it the Spinning Wheel, where other Grisha are, like one of Alina's friends from last season, Nadia, is there, along with Zoya, which even Zoya is kind of apologizing for how she acted. It's like, right, I underestimated you, plus I was a little jealous. But like the fact of the matter is, this isn't a time for like apologies, and this is a time you're going to need allies. So she's like, I'm here to offer my help. Because, once again, making her see like Kerrigan made you feel small because that was the only way he could control you and have power over you. You are a lot stronger than you will admit who you are, so we need to gather together to stop what's coming. And ultimately it's like, yeah, they find out Kerrigan's alive because they found all those people that were killed, that were capturing Grisha. Like, yeah, those people are dead and they're cut in half. And the only person who has those powers, obviously, Bagra does, but the only person who really had the motivation to do that, who can do the cut, as she says. It's interesting. I'm curious, are we going to eventually get to the point that Alina, because Alina's main thing is like, right, she takes her power and she like basically fires it like a laser. So I'm curious, will she eventually get to the point that she kind of copies Kerrigan, and where he makes like a cut of shadows, she can make a cut of light type of thing. Might even be how she eventually like finishes him once and for all, is like slice him in half or something, or like decapitates him or something. I could definitely see something like that happening, just because that's his go-to move when it comes to killing people. I mean, granted, he's got his shadow goons now, so. But Nikolai also suggests something else, because it's like, right, he has to nip two problems in the bud. The fact of the matter is the anti-Grisha movement that's kind of happening, plus Kerrigan, plus Fjorda, like nipping at the borders and just being an issue, especially because they've got a 20 million, like, bounty on her head. His suggestion is, by Alina taking his name, it gives her, like, royal protection. But it means they'd have to get married. Don't even have to get married. They just at the very least have to put up the pretense of they are engaged and this is real. And her having his name is enough to protect, which obviously complicates things between Alina and Mal. But even Mal's like, yeah, I recognize that this is bigger than us. Like, what we have is real and it's important. But the fact this is bigger than us. This is about, once again, stopping Kerrigan. It's about looking out for both the Grisha and those in the first army Vasily is just using as kind of his plaything. So there is so much riding on this, so we kind of have to put our feelings aside. But Mal's like, no matter what choice you make, I got your back. I will support whatever decision you make. And we see by the end of the episode, Alina has chosen to do this because it is the better option, because it gives her the freedom to do what she needs to do, gives them the time that they need, and kind of buffer zone so they can find the third mythical animal, the Firebird, because she needs that, because she couldn't take down the foe with just the two she has, so she needs the third, which Kerrigan knows about that. He's trying to find the Firebird before she does, so that's where things stand on that front. And speaking of Kerrigan, obviously David shows up, and obviously he needs David because, well, David and Jinya ended up helping with the stag situation last season, and he was hoping that David could help with the whole Firebird. Well, first and foremost, it's like he gave him the journal, so it's like, hey, maybe you can help me with my condition. Once again, he was hoping like Vadim could help as well. So he's got multiple people attacking this from different fronts, but it's the thing of, I'm trying to mitigate my symptoms, but also keep the positive effects of, I got my shadow goons, but it's taking a major toll on me, like endless headaches. Fact of the matter is, I'm coughing like crazy, so. And I love the conversation he had with his mom, because his mom's like kind of making the point I was bringing up before, like where it's like, yeah, you're repeating history like hundreds of years later, and we're right back to where we started because you made the decision to now alienate the Grisha as enemies. Again, you put them in a positive place for a while, but now we're back to where we were. Now Grisha are being hunted and discriminated against. So, because for her, it's like, I trained you, I made you strong, I made you cunning, but the one thing I didn't do was teach you how to be compassionate. And maybe that was, she wasn't in a compassionate mood at the time, because we see Bagra, she isn't, it's that thing of time is enough to change you. Sadly, it wasn't enough to change Kerrigan from being who he was, but even Bagra has a different perspective now, and maybe it's because of meeting Alina and the possibilities of who she is. A combination of that and time changed her perspective because she started to see her son for who he really is. I'm sure she kind of puts that on herself of like, right, I failed you. If I taught you more compassion, maybe you, I mean, for him, it's like, right, I made the mistake of not killing the first king. Like, I should have like ran everything from the beginning, not just the palace. I'm planning on running this entire country and making it a place for the Grisha. He's trying to make it seem like he's doing it for their people. It's like, which, once again, it could be at the heart of his motivations, but it's so twisted by his own ambitions of like, no, I want to be powerful. Like, I want power. You wanted Alina's power to bring other people to their knees. So don't make it seem like this is about your people as Grisha. It's about you and your need for power and your need for control. Because Bagra even goes as far as calling him, it's like, right, she's not Alina's not the one that's scared. You are. You're still that scared little boy you always were. And to kind of pay his mom back, he cut off her finger because it's like, right, one of the previous people when it came to amplifiers, used finger bones, and he has Vladimir is like, yo, figure something out about using my mom's bone and kind of at work as an amplifier for me. And everyone's scared. Jinya and David, once again, and Vladimir is kind of like, yeah, we kind of have to work with you, but I don't know how all the other Grisha feel, because they might be feeling like vindicated in like their rage. And it's like, yeah, let General Kerrigan like be however he wants to be, because we are riding with him because he's the only one looking out for the Grisha. So they might not see the scariness of who he is like David, Vladimir, and Jinya see, which sadly David and Jinya were trying to run away and get to Alina now that Kerrigan knows that he knew she was alive and he can sense her, but he can't pinpoint her at all. So even he was surprised to find out, oh, so she's back in Ravka, and she tried to attempt it to take down the fold. It's interesting that he couldn't feel that. I guess it's like the fold is kind of its own entity, even though he kind of birthed it with magic. It's not directly connected to him in that regard. But he still has a deep enough connection with Alina, because even David was like, connecting you and Alina, that was like the first, there's no precedent for it. So he doesn't know, like, I don't know if it's kind of implied, because David made it sound like some of the not the antler, but some of the stag was still in his hand. So maybe that still connects him and Alina, but as long as the wound is open and isn't closed, and even Jinya or a healer, I don't know, would be able to properly close it, just like the wounds on his face can't be properly closed. But it might be because of the more magical condition of his situation, of the coughing and headaches, that stops any wound from being fully healed. Or once again, maybe it's just the Volcra, just their damage can't be fully healed. But as long as that wound is on his hand, it will always connect him to Alina. He'll always have some thread he can pull on and drag her to him. I mean, granted, she kind of cut that connection from her end, but he can still reach out to her, as we see. But what's interesting, though, is that power is so powerful that it's able to kind of affect, even though it's supposed to be like kind of almost like an empty space, or like more of like a middle ground, like meeting of their powers, that they're able to interact. But he was able to interact with the candle beside her bed and was able to kind of like turn off, like extinguish the flame. And you're like, okay, so it's almost like he was really there. Like, so they have, like, when they do that, they do have some, I don't know whether that was him really leaning into his power and kind of pushing it, or just kind of representing how strong he is, because that connection's there. He's able to physically affect things around her. Or is that supposed to be indicative of maybe when that's happening, he actually kind of took control of her body for a moment and it made her put it out. But then when she kind of wakes up, that's Alina waking up. But maybe their connection allows him some control over, like, they kind of remote control her body without her realizing it. Like, maybe there might be something like that going on if we want to kind of deeper explain it. Or maybe it's just I have the power to kind of, like, to a small extent affect the world around you, as if I'm really there, because he's kind of pushing the boundaries between the real world and the kind of in-between space they kind of make for themselves in that connection that they have. I don't know. That's kind of my thought about it. But speaking of Jinya, because I brought her up earlier, where she attempted to run, I guess, because I was wondering if Kerrigan was going to swallow her up in the shadow, and I was like, how would that benefit you? Because you need Jinya, but basically she's unconscious now. because of that. And it's like, all right, the moment she regains consciousness, show her off to the rest of the Grisha so they know, fall in line to anyone that tries to betray me. David ran off with the journal. He's going to try and take that to Lena. Along with that is any attempt of understanding his condition and potentially curing it. So he's double screwed on that front. He's probably still going to try and find the Firebird. Bagra it's unclear whether or not Bagra actually knows where it is, and maybe Vadim could end up, well, because of Bagra's finger, I mean, we don't know if he's going to come back for seconds, thirds, fourths, and fifths, and up to 9 or 10, you know. We don't know how many fingers he might be attempting to take to act as an amplifier, but, I mean, that might be the only one, but who knows what that means in the long run for him. Then on the other side of things, we have Kaz and the crew basically kind of licking their wounds after the ambush from last episode. And there's kind of dissent amongst the ranks because of Kaz's like vendetta against Rollins. It's like, that's all you're focused on. And Nej, like, that could have ended badly. Nina's cut up. I was like, yo, Waylon almost got his head, you know, taken off. It's like, well, the only one who kind of walked away, like, I mean, obviously he almost got choked out, and it's like, yeah, there was a shootout and everything, but Jesper kind of walked away, okay, but it's like, it doesn't make it all okay. So, but, obviously Nina kind of gets on Kaz about, and Nej is like, right, you might want to check on her, because I'm not a healer, but I did the best I could, and, end up helping with the whole, Matthias thing, which we'll circle back to that in a second, but, ultimately, Kaz ends up talking to Nej, and she wants to understand what this is all about. And he's like, Pekka killed my brother. And it's like, I'm wondering that, like, that's the thing. Did he literally kill your brother? Or is it because of the circumstances he left you in that he killed your brother? In the sense of, like, you guys starved and maybe he ended up getting the plague and ended up dying. Or 2, that he actually legitimately, like, your brother maybe tracked him down and tried to get it back from Pekka. Because I have a better because I was wondering, like, oh, Pekka, like, did he change his name to go, like, into hiding? It's like, no, he's a con man. And he ended up conning, Kaz and his brother, specifically his brother. It's like, oh, I need you to make this investment in me. I'll put the money out there, and then I'm gonna give you back everything. Like, you're gonna be so rich and stuff, yada yada yada. It's a Ponzi scheme of sorts. It's like, oh, invest your money, I'm gonna bring it back twofold. And after he got their money, he disappeared. Which there was a neat parallel with, I'm assuming, Pekka's daughter, where her and Kaz were playing this game. She's like, all right, you offer me something, like, we have to both put up something in exchange. And then she holds out her hand, like, secretly had it hidden, like, something there. He's like, whoa, that's a trick. And she's like, yeah, that's how this game is played, like father, like daughter, which we haven't seen her come up in this. So either she's gone, or the moment Kaz removes Pekka from the board, his daughter's going to step into the fray. I mean, we know he has at least 2 children. So not unless that girl was like someone he paid to pretend to be his daughter, because he has a son, not unless that's actually his grandson. And, you know, because his daughter would have been about the same age as Kaz. Once again, not unless she ended up dying or something like that. So that kind of, I mean, just like this is Kaz's revenge, this could ultimately be hers. Like, I think it's also supposed to be befitting that cycle of hate where it's like, right, it never ends, because it's like, right, you're mad at him and what he caused you, but eventually if his daughter or son could eventually grow up wanting revenge against you for what you did to their father. So that ends up, I mean, with their daughter, if she's like still around and as old as, you know, who knows, you know, and if it's not her, it could be his son when he gets older, because that, it's just a cycle repeating itself of what this place does to people, you know. That is kind of a never-ending cycle. But he ended up telling Nej about his brother, and Nej was like, well, then we will end him for it. Because obviously it hits a spot for Nej where it's like, yeah, she has her own brother situation, because she has no idea, you know, that was a plot beat last season, and something we haven't circled back to is her brother. She's unsure if her brother's still out there, whether he's gone or what. So when it comes to a sibling situation, it's like, when it comes to siblings, she understands that rage, and it's like, right, I will back you up. But then we had this like sweet moment between Nej and Kaz, where it's like, she was like, did you have anyone that kind of protect you? And he's like, did you ever have anyone to look after you? And it's like, you know, it's like, all right, because she's going after the taxidermist. Was it Morgan's is his name? It's like, yeah, she's going after him. It's like, bro, he has weaknesses, and like, look for some old scars and stuff like that. And she's like, do I have a weakness? And he was like, yeah, you basically like fall back on your like back foot before you pounce. And she's like, do you have a weakness? And he's like, the limp, the cane. but obviously no one's ever been smart enough to see the real weakness, and they're kind of getting close, and then you have Nina there looking like, oh, interesting, so, but, and then she's like, it's not like that. It super is like that. The fact is, Kaz doesn't look like I think it makes it easier if he's able to kind of treat her as like, oh yeah, she's like my silent, like, stealth assassin, but it's like, she's more than that to him. But for him, it's like, to get what I need, I can't be so caught up in my feelings. And I think since losing his brother, like, it hardened him, and he's afraid to kind of really open up and let the people around him know that he actually cares about them. You know, he cares about Inez and Jesper, but he never fully let it on. Ultimately, Jesper and Wyland ended up breaking into Pekka Rollins' estate that he's using kind of as a front. Like, oh, this is supposed to be a glass factory, but it's like, no, actually, it's a secret estate of his. And they run into his son, Albie, which are like, yeah, the kid's kind of a little shit, but, you know, if Kaz finds out about him, Kaz might do something in the process. But Kaz is like, okay, no, I already know about him having a son. He renamed the Crow Club this. It's like, Pekka would never describe himself as a prince. He will always be a king in his eyes. So much meaning that there's someone else in that fray, in that void. So it's like, okay, so I know he has a son. What's his name? And Jesper promised Wyland he wouldn't say it, but Jesper did. And I guess it's because maybe his bound loyalty to Kaz. Maybe that's what it is. But even Wayland's like, you promised you wouldn't, because there's something sparking between them. Because it's like, right, why didn't you remind me that we met each other? He was like, well, you didn't remember me. He was like, yeah, to be fair, it was dark. Plus, when I woke up, you were gone. So, curious where all that's going to end up ultimately going. Because Wayland said he wasn't going to go anywhere until Kaz was like, nah, like, I'm bringing this down. Like, you won't even have to worry about it. You're not going to have to make any explosives. You're not going to have to touch a hair on that child's head. But I'm going to make him suffer. So, I don't know if that's implying Kaz is going to do something to that kid. Or at the very least, pretend like he did something to the kid to bring Pekka Rollins. It's like, right, you want to feel pain. You want suffering. What I've gone through, I'll make you feel it tenfold. Because he's like, I have the weapon that will end all of this, and it's suffering. And how he'll go about that, we'll have to wait and see. But also, Kaz had his badass moment this episode when he went to the drag club and the guy wouldn't, like, help him. And it's like, all right, I'm going to need all of your killers here. People like me. And Kaz showed you, yo, might have the cane, might have the limp, but don't underestimate me. And he went to town on that, you know? And I love that he stabbed the guy, and the guy's like, my leg. He's like, you know, a cane, it'll help. And it's just like beating the shit out of him. And they got some licks in. He walked away a little bloody. But for him, it's like, the price to pay in this city is blood. And I will happily pay it with yours. So some of your men work for me now. And it's just like, yo, got some muscle from the dregs now backing them. So they're filling up that muscle quota of theirs now. So Kaz is ready to make his strike. Sadly, Nina, you know, because Kaz did help her out, was like, yo, talk to this one particular guard. They'll get your letter to Matthias. Sadly, Matthias at this point in time was put into the fray because there's prison fights. And it seems like they don't just have you going up against humans. They also have you going up against creatures. Like his cellmate's like, oh yeah, my previous cellmate went up against kind of this dragon lizard that basically has acidic saliva or whatever, and just kind of melted his face to the bone or whatever. So you're like, yikes. So, and now Nina ended up getting caught by Pekka because she kind of didn't stealthily went trying to get to Matthias and ended up, you know, now Pekka knows like, oh, I have some leverage over you. I could get your fighter out, especially because you know him first for name basis. So obviously he means a lot to you. Bring me Kaz, or your boy's next fight will be to the death, you know? So, and obviously, like, he took a few lickings himself when it came to that fight in the cage and stuff. But he took the guy out, which the guy had, like, tattooed on his back. Cannibal, interestingly enough. I mean, he had blood around his mouth, so I guess that, you know, speaks all that it needs to speak about. But, so now Nina's going to end up betraying the team because of that, so... Once again, if it means protecting Matthias, especially from a situation she put him in an attempt to save him, then especially because she tried to reach out to him, but he feels so conflicted because he still cares about her, but it's still the thing of like, I shouldn't care about you. You put me in this terrible situation. Now I'm locked up here, so I kind of want nothing to do with you. So it's like she still has all the feelings for him. His are at best mixed, if not completely negative, at best extremely mixed. I didn't talk about it either, but Inej going up against the taxidermist dude and putting in some work. And it's like, yeah, it was kind of a draw to some extent until it's like, right, I'm going up against this guy. Remember what Cass said, go for his weaknesses, but he doesn't have any weaknesses. He doesn't feel pain. And it's like, that is a weakness. Because he doesn't feel pain, he won't know when to stop. He'll just keep going, and that will be his disadvantage. And it's like, right, he's like, oh, I know the points to cut you, to slow you down, but Inej is like, I know those points too. Had sliced like the back of his legs and ended up pushing him into something, and it stabbed him. And she has that thing she had gotten from Alina, and it's like, oh, like, basically it's like, oh, it's about a saint or whatever, and it's like, oh, what would she, or either that was just something religious she automatically had, but I think, if I remember correctly, that was something Alina had given her, right, last season. And it's like, oh, what would she do if she was here? But it's like, she's not here. I'm the one here who gets to decide how this plays out. And she goes ahead and kills him. It's like, yeah. It's kind of wild since, like, she started killing last season. I mean, for her, it's just it's all about survival. So it's like, I will kill if need be, because it's do or die type of situation, especially in this regard. So once again, she's extra motivated because, like, yeah, this guy will kill me and everyone I care about, but also, like, I understand what Cass is fighting for now, and that motivates me even more. So she even said a prayer at the end of, like, yeah, forgive that which can be forgiven type of situation. So it's like, she still has her faith, but she does what needs to be done type of situation. So all of that's going to lead to some very interesting developments all across the board when we ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.